to another Conversations on Awaz-e-Haqiqat, which also stands for the voice of truth. I'm your host, Chris Malikabhadra, and depending on whichever part of the world you are listening to me from, today's topic is something that's very close to my heart because it intersects two pivotal issues: women empowerment, mental health, and some women who've made their mark, their foray into politics, parliament, and some women who are recording women who've been forgotten in the pages of history. All this work, what does it take to produce this amount of heroic work? What does it take to document our heroes and heroines? And many more questions as I talk to, and I'm very privileged to have Zerbanoo Gifford on my platform today, or tonight again, human rights campaigner, author, president of the World Zoroastrian Organization, and founder of the ASHA Centre, a charity working for the empowerment of young people, sustainable development, and peace and reconciliation worldwide. Zerbanoo Gifford holds the International Women of the Year Award 2006 for her humanitarian work, which spans 50 years of grassroots and global activism. My apologies. She's also been a director of Anti-Slavery International and of the Charities Aid Foundation. Gifford received the Nehru Centenary Award in 1989. She was nominated for the Women of Europe Award in 1991. A biography of her by Farida Master, Zerbanoo Gifford, and Uncensored Life was published in 2015. Zerbanoo was one of the 7 former pupils who featured in Roedean School's 125th anniversary celebrations, which is the girls' equivalent to Eton and Harrow. On that note, a very good morning, Zerbanoo. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I survived the night.
I think given the times we're in, we have to count each night as we survive the night. We have to be thankful for every second that we are alive. So,
yes.
First of all, it's an honor to have you, Zerbanoo. Thank you so much for saying yes to this conversation. I'm just kind of inspired and awed by the work you've done. It's like an amazing history and legacy that you've carried and you've left behind. But I would like to start with the first things first is you've been one of the few women who forayed into British Parliament, few ethnic women, if I have to use the word, who forayed into British Parliament. What was it like then being a woman to make that mark? And in today's date and time, what advice would you have for maybe our or the generation after us who wish to do something similar?
Let me not be pessimistic, but I think politics is certain sorrow, uncertain joy. You have to be both mentally and physically very strong to go into politics, because most political lives end in failure, assassinations, or you'd lose an election. You've got to actually be very clear in your mind, why do you want to be in that arena? And it's like, you know, gladiators fighting. I went into politics when I was a young woman with 2 young children, sort of by accident. I had time on my hands. I had been London organizer for the charity shelter for the homeless, and I had decided that I wanted to be at home with the boys when they were little. I think abdicating of responsibility to other people, I can't understand why people do that. Why bother having children if you don't want to look after them yourselves? And it was just literally by accident. The Liberals came, they wanted to put a poster of, we had a very beautiful tree in our front garden, which was sort of floodlit. And I was so flabbergasted that they were able to get up the tree on a ladder and put the poster up that I started talking to them. And they said, well, why don't you stand for elections? And then they said, of course you can't win. You're an Asian woman. No Asian woman can win anything. That triggered something in my brain. I can't stand stereotyping people. And I thought, well, I've got nothing else to do. I was taking the boys to the park. I thought it'll be good for them to actually go and meet the electorate, to meet other people and to be part of my life. So I agreed to stand. And then the rest is history. I had a 27% swing. I took a seat for Major Hassan, who was a conservative. And that led on to standing for Parliament, all sorts of things. But it was really taking the opportunity and not accepting what people think you can do and not do. So many people are damaged and hemmed in because of others people's low expectations of them. And I think you should just take life's opportunities and see where it takes you.
Right.
And it was fantastic. I had 15 years of being very involved in political life, ended with being on the advisory committee to the British Home Secretary, Jack Straw. And politics, what it does for you, it opens many doors, because I had never made a public speech. I mean, I didn't know about public speaking. I didn't know about campaigning. I didn't know how to deal with the media. I certainly couldn't have done a program like this. So it was very, very educational. And it's wonderful to be able to be in the positions of power where you can actually change people's lives.
Right.
And I always thought it was very funny because besides being the first Asian woman, well, non-white, and of course terminology goes on changing, now we're the global majority. I was also the 13th councillor, and so I was called the 13th man because they were all men. So I was sort of an honorary man in those days. Now remember, this is nearly 50 years ago, so the world has changed. Yes. And we have reserved seats for women now, the Labour Party. We have women who become, 3 women prime ministers.
Yeah.
I never thought that was possible.
But Zerbanoo, you raised a very important point that no matter how we term the word, right, women of color, Asian ethnic, the stereotyping is still very much prevalent, if I say so, in the society, right? And then on top of that, you are a woman from different backgrounds. This intersection often pulls women down. So how does that make you feel that even in the 21st century, we are talking about a generation with artificial intelligence, but on the other side, somewhere in some part of the world, a woman's still being brought down just because maybe she's a woman from an ethnic background, she's a woman of color, and she's a woman, and that's why she's thought, oh, you're not fit for the job. How does that make you feel today?
Well, I think it's just a complete waste of resources. I also think it's damaging on the individual woman because of the huge potential she has, and I think it's a dual responsibility. It's a responsibility that I have towards my own sex to empower them, but it's also a responsibility of the woman that is being disadvantaged and taken advantage of. May I give you an example, a story? I was asked by Mark Shand, who was running the elephant family. He's dead, but he was the brother of Queen Camilla, to try and help his charity that was looking after Indian elephants. I explained to him that my interest was in women and in people. I love elephants simply because I am a great believer in Lord Ganesh, and I think he manifests great things in the universe. Anyway, I'm also a great believer that if you are going to take part in anything, you should actually experience what it's like for the people you're helping. So I went to the Himalayas, to the Gujar community, to see how they were, what was happening. They were at the end of having elephants destroying their village, and therefore they were very against elephants. And when I went there, I was absolutely stunned that I couldn't see any women. There was no women. I was just dealing with men. There was a platform. I was on the platform talking to the men, and I decided there and then, I said, where are the women? Because they also have to tell me their stories and what do they need? What help do they need? I was told in no uncertain terms that they had no power. They were in the house. So I just I knew I had power because they needed my money. So I just stood there and said, I am not dealing with any of you. I want all the women out of the house. They had a sort of shed place where they met. And the women were taken there because the men realized that I was serious. And I was quite shocked at the head man. He was sort of hitting the women on the back of their legs to sort of get them into the room. And when we were there, I asked them what they wanted. And they told me they didn't want sewing machines. They didn't want to sew. They said they had people coming to the village who thought that all women wanted to sew and to make money. They told me, we want buffaloes. So I said, why do you want buffaloes? And they explained to me that the buffalo was the prize animal for everybody to have, because that's where they were sustained and the money came from. So I thought that was not too difficult for me. So I immediately gave them the money to buy the first buffalo, which we called Buffalo Bill. And I then went back to England and fundraised, and we managed to make enough money that every woman had a buffalo given to her. So the economics of the village changed. Women now had the power and they were self-reliant. So the story is that we often think we're helping people because we think we know what they want. We don't. We have to listen to people. And my mother used to say to me, we got 2 ears and 1 mouth. She said, close your mouth and listen with your 2 ears, and you'll find out exactly what women want, because they know they're at the coal face. They're having to deal with everyday life. So that's just one example. Another example was that I was very fortunate to take over the chair of the Community Relations Panel from Lord Avebury. And I think that was because of the voting system we had then, which wasn't first past the post for the committee. It was a PR vote. And I think that everybody voted for themselves on the committee. And I was the only woman on the committee. And I think they thought they would put me second. There wasn't any chance of me winning. And of course, it went to the second vote, and I got everybody's vote on the second vote, and I became the chair of the committee. I decided that we couldn't have any committee that didn't have 50% women. So the next meeting, I brought that up, and I was told in no uncertain terms that that wasn't possible. The women didn't have the right biographies, CVs. So I said, well, how can you get the right CVs if you don't actually sit on these committees? So it's always the same people. At the next meeting, the same thing happened. So I decided to take chairman's action. And I told them that I was dissolving the committee, and they would have to reapply. And I was going to co-opt women onto the committee, which I did. And we had a committee that was 50-50. We did a 1 year looking into ethnic minority involvement in British life, which I chaired. And it was brilliant. And the women who took part are all holding positions of power now, because they had that opportunity to actually show what they could do. But up to then, they couldn't get onto these committees. That's just 2 examples where I think it's important that women help women. So women have to empower themselves. And you can't sit back and rely on other people to do it, because they won't do it. People in power don't give up power easily.
True. I think from what you said, 2 things are very true and accurate. Is power kind of takes over your body and soul, and womanhood and allyship are the key in today's date and time. As a woman, if you are competing with another woman, then that's it. We go back 50, 100 years. But Zerbanoo, the next thing that I wanted to know is, what motivated you to start ASHA Centre?
I can't really answer that. I think the universe decided that I was to do that, and I just went with the flow and did it. I've been all over the world and worked for organizations and done many things. And I find that there are many, many good and very pure people. And the majority of people are good and they want to do something worthwhile with their lives. I also believe very strongly that there is dark forces, and there are people who do not want to give up power and do not want to allow people to come forward. So I thought it'd be wonderful to have a place that was holistic and beautiful, because quite a lot of our lives is filled with ugliness, and there's no need for that. And somewhere that was holistic in nature. I think nature is very healing. And the story is so long, and the difficulties and the challenges and going to court and being turned down for grants. And there's so much in the story that it's a blockbuster. And I can't tell you today. But it happened. And I think, you know, when something is supposed to happen at a certain time in history, it happens.
Yes.
And people often ask me, you know, how did you do it? I didn't do it. It was God's doing. It was the universe's doing, not my doing. And the right people came together, the right place turned up. And I can say hand on heart, we've transformed the lives of thousands and thousands of people. We were the main provider for the European Union's Erasmus Plus program, which is the educational program. We have wellness. I mean, just take the last 3 groups that have been at ASHA. We had an international women's group that came. Then we had 41 guitarists from all over the world that came. And the last group that's just left yesterday were ASHA, which is a charity that helps young people that have been trafficked, which now seems to be happening all over the world. So that's just an example of the last 3 groups. We're very diverse, and we don't advertise because we've never had to advertise, because people come and they just fall in love with the place. They call it a mini paradise. And one young person from Lithuania wrote saying his soul rocked at ASHA, and I thought that was a lovely lovely thing to say. So people feel held there. They feel secure. They know it's sacred land. It's very sacred breast land, and a lot of transformation work is done there. And I think I have to say to your audience that you have to come and experience it. It's in Gloucestershire, in the Forest of Dean. And I can't tell you about it. You can't look on it. You can look at the website of the ASHA Centre, but you actually have to feel the energy. And then when you feel the energy, you know you're changed. And every person who comes is treated as an individual and cherished. And I think that's the secret of life. We forget to cherish other people.
True. Very profound. I think it's more rapid in today's time because we're just running. We're running on our hamster wheels. We don't have time for each other. So you're very Zerbanoo, I'll kind of roll back into one of your main visions, which is women empowerment and the awareness around it. Now, I was born and raised in Delhi, and in that the South Asian subcontinent, a lot of the areas are not as well equipped, or they don't have access to education as you and I have sitting into well-developed nations, right? My question to you is, how can we add to this awareness campaign in those areas where women, even to this day, don't have enough education or control over their narrative?
Well, can I give an example of a group that have come from India, young girls, that have come for 9 years every summer to the ASHA Centre. I had been given a Nesta fellowship in Britain. Nesta means the National Alliance of, I'm so sorry. Nesta is National Endowment of Science, Technology and Arts. And what I'd asked to do when I got the fellowship was to actually interview over 300 women from 60 countries. And I wanted to look at what they had done, what they considered successful, what was their stories, really.
Mm.
And one of the women was Leela Poonawalla, who had been head of Tetra Pak in India.
Yeah.
And she'd been the first woman to be a double CEO of international organizations.
Mm.
Anyway, she, on retirement, had started a charity, the Leela Poonawalla Foundation. And I'm a great believer in working in partnership with people. I think, you know, if you work with other people, more things happen quickly.
Yeah.
Instead of starting it all over again for yourself. Anyway, she was brilliant at choosing young girls. Their charity funded young girls from very, very disadvantaged backgrounds to do postgraduate work. And these girls were chosen each year. We had about 25 every year. They came and spent about 3 weeks with us.
Yeah.
And we completely transformed the way they operated.
Mm.
And when they went back, it was wonderful. One year I went to a conference where the parents were, and it was wonderful to hear the fathers getting on the stage and saying that one father said that he wept so much when his daughter was born, the thought of having a girl, but now he weeps with joy because everybody in the village salutes him because his daughter's been to England and she's doing so well.
Mm.
And another father got up and said it was wonderful. His daughter was taught how to actually make her bed and how to keep the room, you know, looking lovely. And he said that she taught him that he too had to take part in housework.
Mm.
And he said he never thought that he would listen to his daughter, but he was so impressed with her. So this is a small example of how you can change lives.
Mm.
But it has to come from everybody, and it has to come from society, and it comes from different angles. So it comes from politics and changing the law, whereby women have to have education. It comes from working with other organizations and people to ensure that you're empowering those who are powerless.
Yeah.
And I'm often asked, you know, what do you want in your obituary? And I said, I want my obituary to say, she empowered the powerless and enlightened the powerful. So I think it's very important because I think people who have power can make things happen quickly if they want to. Often they don't want to.
True.
Because they like the status quo.
Yes.
So what you're asking is to change the status quo. And finally, the only way to change the status quo is also to start with yourself. If you change yourself and you look at what things is really about and what you want to do, what impact you want to make, that has a catalytic effect on other things.
Absolutely.
And I think women have a responsibility to ensure other women have the opportunities that they have had.
Yeah. Pulling each other up rather than bringing each other down is the need of the hour.
Yes.
Speaking of women again, Zerbanoo, you are a cited author, very famous author. You've written so many books. How do you bring back the heroines who were forgotten from our days and time in history? How do you document them?
Well, I wasn't a writer. It was just that I was on a television program when Benazir Bhutto had become Prime Minister of Pakistan, and it was great excitement. First time a Muslim woman running a Muslim country.
Yep.
And I was quite shocked. I was on a political program, and I was actually sort of told in no uncertain terms that Asian women were either doormats or just cook curries all day long. And I was really incensed. And I said, well, that's not so. There's some remarkable Asian women. And I was challenged on television to write a book about these women. And I was immediately commissioned because of the television program. And then I went away and scratched my head and thought, my goodness, what have I done? And I started researching. Researching is very important. And of course, I met certain women who introduced me to other women. And I wrote about 101 women who are from Asian from the diaspora, really,
Mm-hmm.
who had made an impact. And then I looked at the women, past women who had made an impact. So people like Noor Inayat Khan, who was one of the 4 women's names up in Dhaka prisoner war camp. And she was a heroine, and yet people didn't know about her in England. I met then modern women, well, Mrs. Karma. I looked up Mrs. Karma, who had the guts to fight for Indian independence and was treated appallingly by the British Empire. Then Lady Harrogate, who again gave up her beautiful house, an Asian lady, a Parsi lady who gave up her house in the Second World War for refugees. So I did the research on the Asian women that had died, but then I started meeting people and I realized how huge our diaspora is. So I was interviewing people from the West Indies, where Indians were taken as indentured laborers. And one of the friends that I became very friendly with was Shakira Kane, Michael Caine, the actor's wife, who came from Guyana. Then I interviewed people who came from Fiji, Mauritius, Seychelles, South Africa, East Africa, West Africa, Europe, and of course in England. And I interviewed over 101 women. I mean, I didn't realize then that the youngest woman ever to become a lawyer in Britain was a Baha'i. And so I wrote about her. Then that led me on to research Cornelia Sorabji, who was the first woman to study law in Britain. And she was Asian and she studied at Oxford. And lovely story that when she was doing her exam, they had to put a curtain between her and the men so she didn't distract them. It was fun. And the interesting thing was that the hardback copy of the book sold out before the launch. So we had to then then it was bought by HarperCollins and it came out in paperback. So that was a huge education for me to actually learn about my own community. And it was the first time that the British public learned about the Asians. And then I wrote a book about Asians in Europe. And of course, that was men and women. Again, that was fascinating. And that led me on to write about one of my heroes, Dadabhai Naoroji, who's going to have his 200th birthday celebrations in September. And it led to me actually co-chairing his celebrations, his 100th celebrations of becoming a member of Parliament in Britain in 1892. And I wrote a book about him, and that was sent to all the schools in Britain. Because again, it was the best kept secret in British political life. Nobody realized that a nation had been elected to Parliament in the Victorian age. So it's fun for me because I find out things I never knew as a historian. And of course, when I was brought up studying history in school, it was all about kings and queens and the British Empire. Never learned about anybody else. You would think that nobody else in the world existed.
True. But Zerbanoo, that leads me to a follow-up question is, nowadays the generation even after me, they're mostly tablet generation, right? Everyone has an iPad, iPhone, everyone is just leaning on technology. But I think books written in paperback, they have a separate value, the history and legacy. Do you think there is a disconnect with the current generation and the way they secure knowledge, correct knowledge about our history?
Very interesting question. Probably, I think when you read, I think a different part of the brain works, and different part of the eye works. I think looking at the computer, I mean, of course, you know, I'm elderly now, but looking at the computer is quite stressful. It's quite stressful, and anyway, I come from the ancient world. I always tell everybody I believe in intuition, and actually, even when you open the book, there's a new book that's come out written by Chris Morsey called From Raj to Blighty, and he sort of picks out all the Asians sort of made an impact in all the different areas.
Hmm.
And I wrote the foreword to it, and it's fascinating. But what is fascinating about it is that you can just open it up and read about different people.
Hmm.
So even that is intuition. Sometimes you open it up on a different page. And I think that's rather exciting rather than just sort of reading on a computer, which is sort of impersonal.
Hmm.
The thing about a book is that you're actually holding something. And I love that. I'm old-fashioned.
I love the smell of a freshly opened, the leaves, the smell of the pages of the book.
Yeah.
Incomparable. I don't know, but that's just me. Zerbanoo, the next thing that I want to come to is yourself as an individual, right? You do all of these things, but at the end of the day, you are a human being of flesh and bones. On a difficult day, Zerbanoo, how do you take care of your mental health?
I go to bed. I go to sleep. I think when I have problems, it's because I'm tired
Mm.
and I've overdone it. So I just jump into bed, go to sleep, and usually when I get up, I'm ready for the next challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But on a serious note, mental healthness, there's an epidemic at the moment, and there's an epidemic among young people, and it's a feeling of we do a lot of work at the ASHA Centre with young people who feel they don't have a purpose in life and they feel completely disoriented. They don't feel that anybody's interested in them. You know, they've got to be high achievers and they've got to do, it's all sort of mapped out for them instead of them feeling that they can they can do what brings them joy. They have to come top of the class, they have to do this, they have to do that. And I think that we are instilling in the younger generation great unhappiness. And great unhappiness leads to not feeling loved, not feeling cherished, not feeling taken care of. And I think that is leading to the epidemic.
Yes.
So I think we as a whole human race have to be very careful what we're doing. And I also think when you're going back to the question about books and websites and electronic, I think there's too much electricity. I think we need to actually do walking in the forest like we do in ASHA. We need to actually be out breathing clean air and drinking clean water and eating good food. And I think what we're giving to young people is not healthy. The lifestyle, they don't eat healthy food, they don't drink clean water. I mean, they're breathing pollution. I mean, it's, you know, what do you expect? You know, I mean, I think we've got to go back to basics and really think, what is it that we want from life? And we are custodians of nature. We are custodians, and I think that we can see all over the world we're having all this climate mayhem. It's mayhem. I get up in the morning. I don't know if we've got, you know, we're going to get sunstroke or whether we're going to have floods or whether we're going to have snow. We don't know what's going on because Mother Nature's had enough. And she's been abused and she's going to erupt. And we have to go back and we have to realize that without her, we're nothing.
Very profound. I think with the population of 8 billion and counting people on this planet, sustainability needs to be seriously looked into because I don't know what kind of a future we are leaving the next generation for. So, as you said, we need to think now. But before I wrap up the conversation, Zerbanoo, what is that one message or advice that you would like to give out to the listeners?
Well, I always like to give advice from my mother, who was a very remarkable woman. She studied with Madame Montessori. She was one of her 4 last pupils. And Mummy used to say to me, the day will come and the day will go whenever I was worried about something. So just hang on, keep your calm, don't worry too much. And the other thing, of course, which both of us absolutely agreed on, was as you sow, so shall you reap. And that is the law of cosmic karma. Whatever you put out, you get back. It's a boomerang, as they would say in Australia. There's no way you can escape from that. And I would like to end with a story because I think it's very profound what happened to me. I have a bleeding condition called thrombocytopenia, where I don't clot properly. And I started bleeding. There was a whole story. I'd gone to see my eldest son at university and started bleeding, and eventually ended up at the Royal Free Hospital at the hematology department, which I'd been very active in supporting when it was being built for Catherine Dormandy, Professor Dormandy, because she had written her thesis on my condition. Anyway, we got there and we were told that I would have to go home because there was no way they could stop the bleeding, and it was goodbye, Mrs. Gifford. So, but my sister, husband, and mummy were there, and they insisted that something was done. Anyway, a nurse came in, and she said, "Is this Zerbanoo Gifford?" And my mother said, "There's no other Zerbanoo Gifford in the world." And so she immediately found a bed, which they said they didn't have any beds. And they eventually got some blood, which didn't match my blood because I can't take anybody's blood. But it came from Birmingham, which was flown in because I had worked at the Home Office. So that was a Home Office connection. The hospital was the nurse. Now, it turned out that the nurse who helped me had been fostered. And I had been in politics, and at that time, they'd stopped giving grants to young people. And I had fought for children that had been fostered to get grants because they didn't have families to pay for them. They had nobody. And she had gone through nursing, and she was there, and I had not ever met her, but she knew who I was. And I thought, my goodness, if that isn't closing of the circle, what is? And then the most remarkable thing that happened was that as I was bleeding and they couldn't stop me bleeding, my hemoglobin went down to 2.5, which is death. And they told my family that I was gone. And I had a near-death experience. And that was very profound for me because I was in a chariot being held up by this immense light behind me. And I could only think it was Krishna because it was Krishna's birthday. And I am a Zoroastrian, Parsi. I'm not a Hindu, but I deeply respect Hinduism. It's very profound. And anyway, he was holding me up in the chariot, and he just said to me, I heard this voice saying, "You can't die. You haven't gone into battle yet." And then they gave me the blood, and my hemoglobin went up. And it was it was a long time before I was well. And I knew that I had to do something, and I didn't know what. I had no idea, but I had to learn patience, which I don't have much of. I'm an action person. I want action all the time. And I waited. And of course, what I had to do was the ASHA Centre. I had to go into battle to create that. But the reason I tell you the story is because we often forget that everything we do, we get back. And when I had the near-death experience, I experienced my life. And what was interesting is that I felt all the pain that I'd given other people. And I also felt all the joy that I'd given other people. And that made me realize that I wanted to spend the rest of my life making people happy.
Amazing, Zerbanoo. Wow, I've never heard I've never heard a near-death experience before in my life. So it definitely sounds profound. And in lieu of that, thanks to you for doing all that amazing work at the ASHA Centre that you do. On that note, Zerbanoo, if any of our listeners want to reach out to you on social media, where can they find you?
The best is to find me either on my website, which is zerbanoogifford.com, and Zerbanoo is Zerbanoo, Gifford is Gifford, or ASHA Centre. That's the best.
Mm.
Because even when I'm traveling all over the place, there's always people at the ASHA Centre who can get messages to me. I don't do social media. I haven't got the time. I just don't have the time. But I do have the time when people need my help. I never say no when people need me. I never say no, but I don't do social media.
Helping.
I find it very trite.
Now, what you're doing, helping and humanity is the need of the hour. So social media can wait, Zerban.
Yeah.
But on that note, thank you so much. I know you've joined me on a Saturday morning. So thank you for giving me this hour out of your busy schedule. To my listeners, if you've heard us for the first time, this was Zerbanoo Gifford, who's done amazing work, amazing grassroots activity. She's tried to remember our heroines from the history. She's still trying to help women who don't have as much power as you and I do. So please log on to zerbanoogifford.com or the ASHA Centre. I'll put the links under the video when it's out the release. And if you've heard us for a while, if you've heard me for a while, I hope you like the content that I've put on the table so far. If you've got any thoughts or comments on this conversation or any of the previous conversations particularly, please feel free to write to me at Awaz-e-Haqiqat@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. I look forward to reading your comments and feedback. On that note, Zerbanoo, thank you so much for joining me. I wish you the best, and it was an honor.
Thank you.
It was really an honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you.